Welcome to our show today, where we hope to discuss various things related to the life that we live in Jesus Christ. And through these discussions, we hope we are able to better navigate the pathway and journey of our life here in this world. We all know that this world is difficult now. There are realities which take us away from Jesus and from the viewpoint of living a life through Jesus. And as we discuss these things, we hope that you find them to be beneficial and helpful to you as you navigate your life, hopefully attempting to follow Jesus. Paul writes in Philippians 4:8, "Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things." We hope to use that verse as our guide and truth for our discussions here on this show. A preaching minister at the Park Avenue Church of Christ in Charleston, West Virginia. I'm joined by Steve Fox, who has been a minister for almost 50 years in the Kanawha Valley area. And it's great to have you, Steve. How are you doing?
Thank you. I'm doing fine. The assignment that we were given this morning is to talk about hope. And we live in a world where there's not a lot of hope right now, where there's a lot of negative stuff. So we want to approach that from a biblical standpoint. It kind of reminds me of the guy who went in a library one day, and he went up to the front desk and he said to the lady behind the desk, he said, "I'd like a cheeseburger and an order of fries." And she said, "Sir, this is a library." He said, "Oh, I'm sorry. I'd like a cheeseburger and an order of fries." Well, here was a guy who was hoping for something. He was hoping to get some food and get something to drink. And he didn't get either one of them because he was in a place that he didn't even understand.
Yeah.
And the way the world is right now, the way our country is, there are a whole lot of people that don't understand what hope is. And there are a lot of religious people who don't understand what hope is, because they just have this mindset that, well, the world's on fire, the world is, people are dying every day, 500, 600, 700 every day. So why is that? And we talked about last week, we are in a I don't know world. It's, some people have this idea that you can go to a judge, or you could go to a sheriff, or you could go to a minister and get all the answers that you want. But we don't have that. And because we don't have that, we have to hook our line on something else. And that's what the Bible calls hope.
I was reading in preparation for our discussion here from 1 Thessalonians chapter 1 verse 3. It says, "We remember before our God and Father your work produced by faith, your labor prompted by love, and your endurance inspired by hope in our Lord Jesus Christ." I think a lot of times we don't get the fact that hope is the power in our everyday lives that allows us to keep putting one foot in front of the other, even when nothing is making sense. My hope, and it's not something that I want. I know we're going to talk about that, but hope is not something that I think, oh, I want to have this. Hope is a reality that I want. And in order to endure, that's where my hope needs to be. That people are kind, that people are good, that life is found someplace else. What do you think?
Well, even Jesus talked about, he doesn't use the word hope in this parable, but I think that's what he's talking about. Even Jesus used the analogy of a wise man who built his house where there was a solid foundation, and a foolish man who built his house where he built it on sand. And I think Jesus is trying to tell us wouldn't it be awful to take this journey and climb up this hill and find out that you're on the wrong hill, or
Yeah.
find out that you were building the wrong house?
Yeah.
So that goes back to our hope. It's an emotion that takes our heart and asks us every day, what are you hoping for? What are your goals? What do you see happening that maybe years ago you thought could never, ever happen? And that's where hope is based. In Matthew chapter 12, Jesus talks about an Isaiah prophecy, and he writes this. Isaiah writes it, and then Matthew quotes it. He will not break a bruised reed or quench a smoldering wick till he brings justice to victory, and in his name will the Gentiles hope.
Mm.
Now you can imagine in the first century a Gentile reading this and saying, I want to be as close to God as I can, and I thought that was Judaism. I thought that's what did it. And now there's some other people coming along here saying that the Gentiles are going to have hope in the message that Jesus brought. So it was not a message to only the Jews. It was a message to Judaism, yes, but the Gentiles were going to be involved also. And so when he says he brings justice to victory, he will not break a bruised reed. He's talking about Jesus. God is not going to take him and crush him. He's not going to quench a smoldering wick, which he was. Instead, his name will be among the Gentiles, and hope is what will allow those Gentiles to have that.
Yeah.
And that's one of our hopes too. We hope that after our death, because that's 100%,
Guaranteed.
100% guaranteed, after our death, we're going to be somewhere, and you either lived your life with God or you lived your life without God, one or the other.
Yeah, it's not it's not like a lot of times when I'm going up to the drive-through and that's when I decide what I'm going to have. The decision in this life is made long before you get to the drive-through moment where you're passing on from this reality to another reality.
And you usually say, I'd like a cheeseburger and an order of fries.
Yeah.
No, wait, I'd like 2 cheeseburgers and an order of fries.
Yeah. But that's the consequences of the decisions that you make. It's where your hope is placed. One of the most striking verses in the Bible that for me is just, when I first read it, it impacted me where I read it and I understood it, is that I don't decide where I'm going. God doesn't decide where I'm going. I decide where I'm going. God has provided a path for me to walk on that takes me someplace else. But when I get to the path, I decide. God gave me the choice to choose another path. If I want to choose that other path, God says, okay, that's your prerogative. Your free will, if you will.
The road not taken.
The road not taken. And all of us, when we make a decision of the path we're on, is we've made a decision, hopefully, where we intend to go. I can't imagine anybody. Now today it's more likely than any other time that you get out on the road and you can just say, okay, I don't care where I'm going, I'm just going, I can remember many times that my wife and I just used to play that game, just see where this road takes us, That's okay just for a Sunday afternoon or Saturday afternoon drive. But in life, the decisions you make have consequences with every step. It happens that way.
And I, this morning driving here to the church building, I almost felt like a criminal. I kept looking for the police cars. Is anybody going to pull me over? Well, if they pull me over, I'm going to tell them I'm going to church to videotape a Bible lesson. Maybe that'll be good enough.
Yeah.
But I felt like a criminal sneaking into my car, sneaking out of the driveway, driving here, just praying that you didn't see any special enforcements.
Yeah. Well, evidently, some of those are not as big a deal as they've made it out to be, because I specifically ordered something up online my wife did, and I went by to pick it up yesterday. And when we went to go to pick it up, there was people literally in line to get food who were just ordering it. There was no 6-foot social distancing going on.
Some of the bigger stores were allowing 100 people to come in,
Yeah.
and they all had to go down the aisle the same way. Instead of going down, turn around, come back, they all had to go in the same direction to try to keep
I have a hard time with that. I'm across the.
We
game,
better
but
get used to it, because I think it's going to get even worse.
You might be right.
Because there's going to be a time when somebody, the federal government or the West Virginia government or state government's going to say, can't go outside at all.
Yeah, it's possible.
For any reason.
Yeah.
So what we would end up doing is, I hope that doesn't last very long. I hope they find a vaccine. I hope they find a cure. I hope they can give something to these people to make them well again.
Right.
I mean, that brings up all kinds of desires and hopes in your mind when you're thinking about that.
Yeah.
Additionally, wonder what does hope look like when we're living it every day? What do you think? Is it as some people like to look at it, is it just positive thinking? You know, there's this idea that, you know, I can I can make myself happy, kind of a Zig Ziglar kind of religion where if I got a smile on my face, it's all good. You know, it doesn't work that way, because I'm always think that one commercial where they're advertising for the emotion drug, where the person puts up the sign and they got the smiley face, and then, you know, but behind it is just
They're depressed.
They're depressed, yeah.
I took a course one time at a church here in Charleston, and there were like maybe 50 men every Monday night for like 8 weeks. And the director asked us, the first thing he asked us to do every night, would you please stand up? And we all stood up, and he'd say, now say, I feel great. And everybody go, I feel great. And you know, you go in and start the class and go, well, that didn't work out too well, because I still feel awful.
Yeah.
Just yelling it, you know, that didn't help me at all. So my hope is not built on how loud I can scream, or what I get on an algebra test. It's not that. Their hope is the basis of something else totally different.
Yeah,
It's not an emotional response in everyday life. It's actually, I like to use it, it's an expression used in some navigational purposes called boxing the compass. I don't know if, a lot of times when ships pull out of port and they're going into the open sea, there will be a line that they will go from and go to, and what they do is, as they're going there, they would make sure their compass would read a certain number. And so that because that one was set specifically for this certain degree. Because if they went out across the open sea without knowing the direction of everything, they would get lost in a heartbeat. Our hope is sort of a compass setting moment in our lives, because we set it. We set our hope on what we think is worth going after. It's not emotional related, though it can be manifested that way. Much like, you know, the guy saying, you know, I feel great. That might...
Most of them did.
That might seem hopeful.
Yeah.
But that's not necessarily hope.
Well, with your illustration about the compass, it's always supposed to point north.
Mm-hmm.
So he is our compass.
Yeah.
He is where we're supposed to be all the time, pointing in a certain direction. Whether you feel great or whether you don't feel great.
Yeah.
There's a passage in 1 Peter chapter 1 at verse 21 says this. He was destined before the foundation of the world. We could talk about that for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
He was destined before the foundation of the world, but was made manifest at the end of the times for your sake. And through him, You have confidence in God who raised him from the dead and gave him glory, so that your faith and your hope are in God.
Mm.
All of us hope, we hope in a lot of things. We hope we have a good economy. We hope everything gets straightened out and everything goes back to normal. There are all kinds of leaders who are saying, hey, once we get through this, we're going to be so much stronger than we were before. Well, that's not much of a comfort to the people who've lost children and mothers and fathers and grandma and grandpa in this whole fiasco. But he says here, you're supposed to have your faith and your hope in one person, and that is God. And that comes through the life of Jesus. Your faith and your hope are in God. I'd like to challenge our audience to, this afternoon sometime, make a checklist. What are the 5 things that you have in your life right now that you're hoping for?
Mm.
And how do you get those? Or how do you listen to wise people around you who say how to get those? Right now there's just a whole lot of, in some cases, disinformed people who are leaders, and others are just plain wrong about their being a leader. What is it in my life that I really want, that I hope for, even maybe every day, that I want to see fulfilled in my own life? Once you get a hold of those things, I think the word hope will be more meaningful to you.
Yeah. Again, going back to some of the couple things that we've talked about, hope being maybe not in the object, but in hopefully the reality. Using the example that you talked about, some of our leaders are hoping that we come to a reality where there is a normal that we come back to, which who knows what that may be, because I know that normal changes. The lives that you and I grew up with, what we would have classified as normal doesn't exist in a roundabout way anymore.
Well, you and I are normal now.
No, well, we're not normal now, but the world we lived in
would have there was an idea of what normal looked like. I mean, we had TV shows that described normal. Andy Griffith, Father Knows Best, and then somewhere in
Leave It to Beaver.
Leave It to Beaver. Then somewhere along the line,
we started changing. The world started illustrating a different normal. We end up with some of the 70s shows of Archie Bunker and Three's Company. I mean, we changed the narrative of what normal was to the point now we don't define normal in very many ways. Normal now is, okay, what do you want?
whatever I want. That's normal.
Yeah.
But
That's not. Going back to your verse there, our normal hope should be only in God. Those other things will not fulfill me, and again, going back to our first discussion, will not give me the power to endure the circumstances that I am. How many people right now are failing because they have no endurance? Their hope is in something that won't give them the strength to make it day by day.
And some people are still using that symbol of hope to get more things that they want
yeah,
that wasn't any more satisfying than it was 10 years ago or 15 years ago. And like you said, normal doesn't mean the same thing it meant when you and I were growing up.
No.
When I was 11, my dad offered me a proposition. He said, you can either join the Boy Scouts or get a pony. And I looked at him and I said, that's the easiest choice I've ever had to make in my life. Boy Scouts or a pony? I'd rather have a pony. And he said, now you have to keep care of it. It's going to be yours. And I don't remember, living on that proposition for a long time, but there were times in my life where I hoped I would get a pony. And Dad bought me a pony. From Queenie, we got 2 other small ones. got Prince and Princess. And then when I had to go to college, Dad said, you know, we have to sell them. I said, yeah, I know that, because there wasn't anybody there to take care of them. So a lot of people hope for things, and then when they get them, they do see a fulfillment. But what has to happen is there has to be some action between emotional and the emotional on the other side.
Mm.
If you just sit there and say, I hope I get a pony, I hope I get a new car, if you're just sitting there saying, I hope I get a new car, and I'm just going to sit there, buy my old car, not get up, not move, not make a telephone call, not do anything, I probably won't get a new car.
No.
As much as I hope for it, as much as I grit my teeth and furrow my brow, as much as I clench my fingers, I want this, whatever that is. I hope for that. And then sometimes when you get it, you don't know. A lot of times the things that we receive make us happy, but sometimes they're just temporarily.
Yeah.
There's this reality that you just lived out with your pony is your hope was someone, you wanted to be the person who had a pony, who had that life that was lived with a pony.
Yep.
And when you had it, it met your expectations of reality. And because of that, you were able to endure everything related, the getting up early in the mornings that you had to go feed that pony, the coming home in the evenings and make sure that it had feed and water, and grooming it and cleaning it. You know, having a pet can be a full-time job in some ways. Yeah. So your hope gave you the power to endure. If the power wasn't in the object, the pony, the endurance was in what you wanted to have, what you wanted to, the life you wanted by being the person who had a pony.
And the people who ask those questions in their mind all the time, okay, I have a pony and I'm satisfied, I'm happy, I'm glad my dad bought this for me. And then if you get to the point where you say, well, if I'm happy with one pony, how about if I had 5 ponies?
Yeah.
Would it satisfy me if I had 10 ponies?
Yeah.
And that's why Paul talks about the hope that's within him, where he says he's satisfied in whatever state he finds himself in. I personally think he was talking about West Virginia, but I'll let you guys argue that later. 1 Peter 3, verse 15. Let none of you, let's get to chapter 3. Always be prepared to make a defense to anyone who calls you to account for the hope that is in you. Now, I've heard preachers and other people in the church use that verse to say, whatever doctrine you believe, I don't believe, and you aren't addressing the hope in the right way. That hope is for you to be able to explain what you want to explain, whether it's true or not, whether it's false doctrine or not false doctrine. So he says, you better be able to explain why this hope is in you. You better be ready to give an account for the hope that is in you. Well, that hope is in all of us. That's the elementary hope of wanting to be satisfied and wanting God to be satisfied by us doing what's in our heart, where that hope came from, and living by that hope.
Yeah, we had a few questions here, and you just answered what should hope look like. Hope should look like the answers that I'm really putting my faith and trust in. Hope cannot be, back to these other concepts of ideas of better jobs, better homes, better cars, more money. Those things will not produce hope in you. They just produce coveting in you, you know. It's just something else you want. It's not, hope has never been defined as something that we want.
It's like Christmas morning.
Yeah. I hope I get what, you know.
I hope I get a bicycle. I hope I get a sled. I hope I get a new sister.
That's more
Some
of
those
a
are
wish.
That's
Did
wishing.
you say a witch? Oh, a wish. Oh, yes. That's more of a wish.
That's wishing, and I think
Sometimes that's the confusion that comes up, is they think hope is a wish.
And they have considered to the point that's almost abnormal. If they don't get that wish,
Mm-hmm.
something's wrong.
Something's wrong.
You've got to start all over again.
Yeah, who cheated me on this?
Yes. Yeah.
You know, why didn't I get that? Now we're going back to our last week's discussion. I don't know. You've mentioned several times about where we direct our hope. And sometimes as Christians, we speak of hope in Jesus Christ in a very vague and broad kind of definition where you could put it on a wall and anybody could have hit it with an arrow. But more specifically, do you think our hope is in certain aspects? Does it begin in certain aspects of the story and narrative of Jesus? Like, this is Holy Week that we're in. This week means more to us as far as, I think, foundationally as Christians than any other thing that, I mean, a lot more than Christmas. I mean, I'm glad Jesus came, but him coming doesn't make nearly the difference that this week makes. The fact that he lived and he died, but more specifically, he was raised, gives us a more pinpointing moment of our hope, don't you think?
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. There are bits and pieces in the Gospels where I think Jesus addressed that. Where's your heart? What are you building? How is it every day that you treat other people? How is it that you pray to my Father and ask Him for help? Are all this going to be answered? No. Well, I don't know. I don't know. But that's where their faith. Job said in Job 13, talking about God, after all this disaster that he went through, all this, he'd have fit right into this world right now. He understood that, and I was talking to a lady the other day who said she didn't think that actually happened. She thought it was a parable. I think I might sit down and reread it in that light. Maybe it isn't, because God goes up to Job and says, well, you had 6 kids, but I'm going to kill all those and give you 12 kids. No, that doesn't work. There's no hope in that at all.
Yeah.
So it's just an emotion that I think helps us all, and Jesus talked about it all the way through his ministry. To answer your question, try not to. To answer your question, that last verse we read says our hope and our faith is in Him.
Yeah.
And when it's not in Him is when all the pathways, those decisions that we make that we talked about earlier, when my hope is in something that is not real, then I'm going to get what is at the end of that path. Mm-hmm. Going back to your analogy of the person who built their house either on rock or on sand. When the storms of life come, they reveal where your hope has been. And for a lot of people right now, they are directing or redirecting their eyes and hearts and focus to now, where is God in our lives? Where has He been? Well, He hasn't gone anywhere. Most in that case have just put their hope someplace else that had no meaning. When the storm of life came, it revealed it had nothing to offer. And it will not sustain you or give you the endurance that you can move forward in your life. I mean,
nor my family have ever been in a situation where there's all kinds of virus and we can't stop it. And we don't know how to stop it.
No.
Or a tornado, or an earthquake, or a tsunami. I've never been in the middle of one of those things. My son's family was almost in the middle of one because he lives real close to where the tornado touched down in Nashville, Tennessee. He said he stood out on the back porch and looked through the window and watched it. And his wife kept saying, Shane, get in here, get in here. And he said, I'll get in there, I'll get in. I've never been in the middle of that. But you can bet that there's some people who have hope, that there's some people who have prayers, there are people who are asking God And you know, some people say, well, that's not a logical idea, because why didn't you pray before the tornado hit and before the virus hit? People, when they have disastrous things like that in their life, and it doesn't have to be something big, it can be really small, they lose their hope.
Yep.
And they lose their hope because it's the wrong thing. But then on the other hand, they can lose their hope even when they have a great, great belief in Jesus and in God.
Yeah.
The guy said to Jesus, I believe, help my unbelief.
We live in
A world today where periodically, it hasn't, not anywhere recently can I think, give an account to, but we know the stories of those who lost hope in their lives, who committed suicide, who for all practical reasons looked like they had the perfect life. They had the money, they had the jobs, they had the careers, they had the fame, they had everything. And yet, evidently they had no hope, because only a hopeless individual would take that path.
path.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing forward in their lives that they can see that's worth it.
Yeah.
So,
I used to read, I've had a couple bouts with depression in my life, severe depression, and I finally had one man teach me that it's okay to say to anybody, I have a sickness, it's called depression.
yeah.
I have a mental illness, it's called depression, and who knows when it's going to hit and when it's not going to hit. I would read things in the paper about somebody took his own life or took her life by a self-inflicted wound, and I go, how in the world could you do that? Well, twice in my life, gone through that depression with bouts of
You can understand why.
despair, I can understand exactly why people end up committing suicide. They just can't take it one more day. And I know it's real easy to say, well, trust in God. Or go for a walk. Well, you go for a walk and you get back and you feel just exactly like you felt when you started on your walk. You feel awful. You feel horrible.
Just sweaty now.
Yeah, exactly. So it's really interesting, I think, and also in some cases a saving characteristic, that when you look at hope and you try to define hope in your own life, you should be able to pinpoint that and figure out what it is. Is my hope in my new car? Is my hope in my new job? Is my hope in the power and the authority that I have at my job? It's real easy to go through life and not write those things down and not put them up here. But we should know where our hope is and what it's finally going to be for us.
Is there anything else you would like to maybe say before we leave this week? Anything extra?
To mention was there's a verse in 1 Corinthians 13. It's read at a lot of weddings. It's called the love chapter, and it gives a very, very broad definition of what love is.
Yes.
We had a couple in our church one time, this is 15 years ago, where the preacher was talking about love, how you can love different things. You can love your wife, you can love your dog, you can love your car, you can love baseball. And I won't give you their last names, but Ann leaned over and said to Sam, do you love me more than ice cream? And he said, what flavor? All of us have those loves in our life, and our hope is put in those loves. And then when you don't have them anymore, or you don't need them anymore, when you're on the other side, you know, the Indians used to put a bunch of stuff in their burial tombs, so their patriot here, their father, their uncle, their brother, could have something over in the other life. I don't think we're going to need that. I think God's going to provide all that. We don't have to take a spear with us and a bucket and some ice cream. We don't have to do that. There's going to be things over there that will take care of themselves.
Yes. Faith helps them.
Always good things. Well, this will conclude this week's time that we have together. And I would encourage you to like us and subscribe to us on the YouTube channel. And additionally, if there's other ways you could get a hold of us or follow us at least as it relates to Park Avenue Church of Christ, you can check us out on Facebook, on our Facebook page. Or you could go to our website, which is parkavcoc.org, and you can catch some past sermons and some articles and so forth there also. In the coming weeks, we will continue these series and have these discussions based on information and things that's going on during the time of the life we're living. And we hope and pray that as we journey together on this road or this path with Jesus Christ, that we can encourage one another, that we can make a difference in each other's lives. I would invite you to join us, hopefully every week, as we discuss the many topics that are relevant to the day and time that we live. If you have any questions, you could email me at mark.mitchell@parkavcoc.org. I would love to hear from you. And if there's a topic related to the time we're living in, let's talk about it. I hope that everything is going well right now, considering all the circumstances that most people are in. And we will pray that God will bring us through this period of time, lift us up, and make us better equipped, and hopefully make us better people, so that we can learn to live with one another and serve one another as He's intended for us to do all along. Thank you. Have a blessed day. Really appreciate you watching.